When I moved into Willowbrook Estates, I thought I was finally escaping the chaos of city life. The pristine lawns, matching mailboxes, and tree-lined streets seemed like paradise. What I didn't anticipate was Karen Whitfield, our H.O.A. president, who treated the neighborhood covenants like they were the 10 Commandments carved in stone. My first encounter with Karen came 3 days after moving in. I was still unpacking boxes when she appeared at my door, clipboard in hand, wearing a bright yellow safety vest that screamed authority. "Good morning. I'm Karen Whitfield, your H.O.A. president. I noticed your moving truck blocked the sidewalk yesterday for 14 minutes, longer than our regulations allow. That's a $50 fine." I explained that the movers needed extra time to navigate my grandfather's antique piano through the narrow doorway. Karen's smile never wavered as she handed me a violation notice. "The rules apply to everyone equally. Welcome to the neighborhood." Over the following weeks, Karen's visits became a regular occurrence. She cited me for leaving my garbage cans out 30 minutes past collection time, for having a garden gnome that violated the lawn ornament restrictions, and for parking my Tesla in my own driveway at what she deemed an improper angle. Each violation came with Karen's signature cheerful delivery and an escalating fine structure. I tried reasoning with her during H.O.A. meetings, suggesting that perhaps some rules needed updating for modern life. Karen would pound her gavel and remind everyone that rules were rules. If we start making exceptions, where does it end? Chaos, that's where. The other residents would nod along nervously, clearly intimidated by her relentless enforcement campaigns. My breaking point came on a Thursday evening in October. I was working late in my home office, finalizing a merger agreement for one of my clients. As a corporate attorney specializing in real estate law, I often worked unusual hours from my home office to accommodate international deals. The large window facing the street provided natural light during day meetings, but required privacy screens for sensitive negotiations. Around 11 p.m., I noticed movement in my peripheral vision. Through the sheer curtains, I could make out a figure crouched beneath my office window. My blood ran cold as I realized someone was deliberately positioning themselves to look into my home. I quietly moved to get a better angle, and there she was. Karen Whitfield, dressed in dark clothing, pressed against my house with her phone held up toward the window. I immediately called 911. "I need to report someone attempting to look into my home. They're currently positioned under my office window." When the police arrived 20 minutes later, Karen was still there, now using what appeared to be a small flashlight to peer through gaps in my curtains. Officer Martinez questioned Karen while his partner took my statement. From my doorway, I could hear Karen's frantic explanations. "I was conducting a routine inspection. As H.O.A. president, I have the authority to ensure residents aren't violating noise ordinances or using their homes for unauthorized business purposes. I suspected illegal commercial activity." Officer Martinez was not impressed. "Ma'am, being H.O.A. president doesn't give you the right to trespass on private property or attempt to look into someone's windows. That's called voyeurism, and it's a crime." Karen sputtered about her duties and responsibilities, but the officers weren't buying it. She received a citation for criminal trespass and voyeurism. As they escorted her away, she shouted back at me, "This isn't over. I know you're running some kind of illegal business from that office. I'll find proof." The next morning, I found a formal H.O.A. violation notice taped to my door. Karen was citing me for excessive nighttime lighting that could disturb neighbors, despite the fact that I only had my desk lamp on during the incident. The fine was $500, the maximum allowed under H.O.A. guidelines for lighting violations. I realized then that Karen wasn't going to back down. If anything, her humiliation with the police had made her more determined to find something, anything, to use against me. Over the next 2 weeks, she filed 6 more violations against me. My doormat was supposedly the wrong color. My newspaper delivery was creating litter. My lawn sprinklers were running during non-approved hours, even though they were clearly on the approved schedule. Each violation notice came with increasingly creative interpretations of the H.O.A. covenants. Karen was weaponizing every rule in the book, stretching their meaning beyond recognition. When I challenged these at the monthly meeting, Karen would smugly reference obscure subsections in parliamentary procedures to shut down discussion. According to Article 12, Section 4, Subsection B, Any resident who accumulates more than 5 violations in a 30-day period can be subject to enhanced penalties, including daily fines until compliance is achieved, she announced at the November meeting, making direct eye contact with me across the room. That night, I sat in my office reviewing the H.O.A. covenants and bylaws with fresh eyes. Not as a resident trying to comply, but as a corporate attorney looking for loopholes, inconsistencies, and opportunities. What I found was fascinating. The documents were surprisingly old, dating back to when Willowbrook Estates was first developed in 1986. More importantly, they contained several provisions that Karen had either forgotten about or chosen to ignore. The most interesting discovery was in the original developer agreements, filed with the county and referenced in the master deed. The documents established something called development rights that could be transferred or sold under specific circumstances. These rights had never been exercised, but they were still legally valid. Even more intriguing was a clause about commercial zoning exceptions for home-based businesses, provided they met certain square footage and traffic requirements. I spent the weekend making phone calls to old colleagues and researching property records. By Monday morning, I had a plan that would make Karen's voyeurism incident look like the tactical error it truly was. My first step was perfectly legal and above board. I filed for a home business license with the county, retroactively legitimizing my home office for legal consultations. The application process required detailed floor plans and photographs of my office space, which I submitted along with testimonials from several high-profile clients about the necessity of secure, private meeting spaces for sensitive negotiations. The county approved my application within a week, noting that my home office exceeded all requirements for a professional legal consultation space. More importantly, the approval came with commercial zoning recognition for my specific address, which triggered several interesting clauses in the original H.O.A. development agreement. Meanwhile, Karen continued her harassment campaign. She started parking across from my house in the mornings, obviously watching for any new violations she could document. Her dedication was admirable in a deeply disturbing way. She photographed my garbage cans, measured the length of my grass with a ruler, and even counted the number of packages delivered to my door. The breakthrough came when I discovered that Karen's own property had some interesting legal vulnerabilities. Her house sat on what the original plat maps identified as Lot 15, but subsequent surveys had revealed that her driveway encroached 18 inches onto the adjacent common area. This encroachment had been grandfathered in decades ago, but it technically violated current H.O.A. covenant restrictions against permanent structures on common property. More significantly, Karen's beloved rose garden extended 4 feet beyond her property line onto what was designated as a future development area in the original master plan. That future development area had never been built on, but the development rights still existed and could theoretically be activated. I made another series of phone calls, this time to a commercial development company I worked with on previous projects. They specialized in maximizing property values through strategic development, and they were very interested in acquiring underutilized development rights in established suburban neighborhoods. The beauty of development rights was that they could be purchased and exercised independently of the current property ownership structure. Someone could literally buy the right to develop a specific area without owning the underlying land, as long as they complied with all zoning and construction requirements. Within 2 weeks, I had arranged for Pinnacle Development Corporation to purchase the dormant development rights for the common areas adjacent to Karen's property. The purchase was completely legal, properly filed with the county, and executed through standard real estate channels. Karen had no legal standing to object because the rights had been established before she even bought her house. The development plans were modest but strategically brilliant. Pinnacle proposed to build a small commercial structure, specifically a 24-hour storage facility with keypad access and security lighting. The facility would serve the surrounding neighborhoods and comply with all commercial zoning requirements for the area. The proposed location placed the storage facility's entrance directly adjacent to Karen's rose garden, which would need to be removed since it encroached on the development area. Additionally, the facility's required security lighting would illuminate her backyard throughout the night, and the keypad access system would generate electronic beeping sounds every time someone entered or exited. But the truly inspired aspect of the plan involved Karen's driveway encroachment. Since her driveway crossed into the development area, Pinnacle would need to install barriers to prevent unauthorized vehicle access to their construction zone. These barriers would effectively block Karen's ability to use her driveway until she could prove legal right-of-way, which she couldn't do because her driveway had always been an encroachment. I watched from my office window as the county surveyor arrived to mark the development boundaries. Karen emerged from her house immediately, demanding to know what was happening. The surveyor politely explained that he was marking boundaries for an approved commercial development project. Karen's voice carried across the street as she insisted there must be some mistake. There can't be commercial development in a residential neighborhood. I'm the H.O.A. president. I would have been notified. The surveyor showed her the filed development rights and the county approval documents. Everything was perfectly legal and above board. More importantly, since the development rights predated the current H.O.A. covenants, they superseded any residential restrictions Karen might try to invoke. Over the next week, Karen made increasingly frantic attempts to stop the project. She called the county planning office, the mayor's office, and even tried to organize a neighborhood petition. Each call and meeting resulted in the same response. The development was legal, properly approved, and construction would begin as scheduled. Karen's desperation led her to make a crucial mistake. She filed an emergency injunction request claiming that I had orchestrated the entire development specifically to harass her. In her legal filing, she explicitly connected my home business license, the voyeurism incident, and the storage facility development as part of a coordinated revenge scheme. Her filing was a gift. By putting her suspicions in writing under oath, Karen had inadvertently created a legal record of her own harassment campaign against me. More importantly, she had documented her belief that my legitimate business operations were somehow worthy of surveillance and interference. I responded to her injunction request with my own filing, detailing Karen's pattern of harassment, the criminal voyeurism incident, and her systematic abuse of H.O.A. authority to target me with frivolous violations. I included photographs of her conducting surveillance, copies of all her violation notices, and testimony from neighbors about her intimidation tactics. The judge reviewed both filings and denied Karen's injunction request within 48 hours. In his written decision, he noted that Karen had failed to demonstrate any actual harm from the proposed development, and that her own documented behavior suggested a pattern of harassment that undermined her credibility as a complainant. Construction began the following Monday. Karen stood in her front yard watching as the excavation crew marked the exact boundaries of her rose garden for removal. The expression on her face was a mixture of disbelief and growing understanding. As the work progressed, the full scope of the project became clear. The storage facility would operate under motion-activated security lighting that would illuminate her entire backyard whenever anyone approached the building. The keypad entry system would chirp electronically every time it was used, 24 hours a day. Most devastatingly, her driveway encroachment meant she would need to apply for a special easement permit to continue using her own driveway, a process that could take months and required H.O.A. approval. The final twist came when Karen received a formal notice that her rose garden violated current property line restrictions and would need to be removed within 30 days to comply with county development requirements. The notice was delivered by the same H.O.A. enforcement company that Karen had used to send me dozens of violation notices. Karen stood in her driveway, reading the official county notice while construction crews worked just feet away from her beloved roses. The realization was spreading across her face like sunrise, slow and inevitable. Her campaign of petty harassment had led directly to this moment. Her illegal voyeurism had caused me to research my property rights, which led to discovering the development opportunities, which led to the storage facility that would permanently destroy her peaceful suburban paradise. She looked across the street at my house, where I stood watching from my office window, and for the first time since I'd moved to Willowbrook Estates, Karen Whitfield was completely speechless. The woman who had turned neighborhood rule enforcement into a personal weapon had just realized that she had triggered the one sequence of events that would turn all of her own rules permanently against her.